Okay, so just a quick introduction for our listeners. Liam Hadry here today with another episode of Presenting Champions for the Simply Inspired podcast. And today I'm joined by not one, but two very, very successful and esteemed athletes. I have the powerlifting couple, Tim James and ValkyRican James, today, who are going to be talking with us about their respective careers in the sport of powerlifting and bodybuilding in ValkyRican's case as well. Now, to give a few accolades here, guys, I have a long list that's, as long as my arm, especially between the two of them. So I'm going to attempt to do this. So Tim started competing in 2003. Holds multiple records: world record deadlift 198 class, national record squat 242 class, national record bench 275 class, and national record deadlift 198, 220, 242, 275. Wow. Multiple national and world medals. Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 national medals, gold and silver. World gold medals as well, 8-time best lifter, competed at the APF, WPC, AAPF, APA, UPA, and is APA certified judge. So wow, that's only one half of this, guys, but absolutely incredible so far. Hopefully I haven't missed anything there. And of course, ValkyRican, some of our listeners will have seen our previous interview, but for anyone who hasn't, bear with me, guys, we've got a lot here as well. So February 2019, first powerlifting meet, first place overall best lifter. April 2019, powerlifting meet, first place overall female. July 19, first place overall female. It goes on like this for a while, guys, but we've got Arnold Classic Grand Champion 2020, powerlifting nationals, 6th place in the world, WPO. Of course, you've recently forayed into bodybuilding. Now, I've skipped over a few there because, between the two of you is a lot, but wow, that is something you don't hear every day. And I think I'm going to be calling you the powerlifting power couple, to be honest, because you really are a power couple with, everything that you share together. So thank you both for coming on the show. ValkyRican, Kathleen, I never know which one to call you, but it's
Kathleen's fine.
Kathleen's fine. It's great to see you again. Tim, like I said, it's great to meet you. So thank you both for making time for this, especially the day before a competition as well, which we'll get to in a minute. But thank you very much. Okay.
Yep.
So getting into it, first of all, now, by the time we release this interview, obviously your competition tomorrow at the time of this recording will have happened. But I'm actually going to start there, even though it's a present day thing, and then we'll go back in time shortly. But how are you feeling? What's going through your mind the day before a competition? Let's start there, please.
Somebody just decided to call me during this. we're using our my phone this time because obviously we're traveling, but honestly I'm feeling okay. I'm a little tired, hungry, but we're on a refeed day, so we're carbing up the day before the show, so the hunger is not too bad. A little, I'm trying not to be anxious, and he helps keep me grounded. I kind of wanted to jump off a hill yesterday just because I was being super critical during my check-in and I didn't like what I saw. And of course, he's like, everything looks great. And then I send my check-in to my coach, and my coach is like, everything looks great. So I think we're our worst critics when we look at ourselves. So, but overall, I'm okay. Mentally, I think my biggest thing was just the mental, how I was going to be dealing mentally with everything. And I feel happy. So I guess everything else, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you feel happy, but it's very good to give an insight into the side of things that people don't see, basically, which is obviously what's going through your mind and the preparation. People only really see the tip of the iceberg, don't they? Which is the competition itself.
Yeah.
Good to touch on everything that goes on behind the scenes. Now, Kathleen, one more question for you. We'll turn over to Tim now in just a moment. But you've also been invited to compete at a very prestigious competition in November as well, which I believe you mentioned to me. So as soon as we're starting a little differently to what I usually do, but we're starting with what's coming up. So how are you feeling about that? What does that opportunity mean to you? Let's just touch on that briefly, and then we'll go back and talk about some previous achievements.
I originally got an invite to the WPO 2 years ago, right? 2 years ago. And I competed, and last year I didn't, go back to try and requalify. We just had the bodybuilding stuff going on. And so requalifications happened again this year.
April.
In April, I did not go because I hadn't intended on lifting at the WPO. And I just happened to be at the gym one day and my phone went off and I looked and I got a guest invite to be a part of it. So super excited. And that's going to be at the Olympia in Orlando, Florida in November.
Wow, absolutely incredible. Well, it's definitely an amazing thing, an amazing invite. And as we spoke about in our interview, your progress has just been, it's been stellar, really, hasn't it? I mean, in only a few years, you've achieved so much, and there's a lot more yet to come. Now, obviously, I've started there focusing on yourself, Kathleen. I'm going to turn over to yourself, Tim, to ask a few questions now as well. Some questions will be for sort of one of you individually, but there's a few things, to be honest, I'm just going to throw out there, and whoever wants to answer first, you just go right ahead, because some of them obviously apply to both of you. So sorry, I should have mentioned that in the intro, but just so you know. So Tim, let's get into it a little bit with yourself. You've achieved an incredible amount of things as well, and you've been powerlifting for, what is it, 20 years, I believe.
20 years, yes.
Absolutely, absolutely incredible. So what I'm going to do to start this off is talk about some of your personal highlights, because what I usually do when I have people who've achieved as much as you have, I'd love to talk about every single one individually, and we will talk about a few individually. But if we talked about every single one, we'd be here till next week. So the best thing to do, condensing it down a little bit, some of your personal favorite achievements would be a good place to start. I know this is a big question to start off with condensing 20 years down, but could you give a mention to maybe 2 or 3 competitions or achievements that mean the most to you personally, please?
Well, honestly, I think the one competition like that has meant the most to me, and I've been a part of it for several years, but I've only gotten to compete in it once, was the Rick Lawrence Memorial Meet, which is the Southern States Championship. I've actually done the Southern States Championship 4 times, but only once since it's been a memorial meet for our friend Rick Lawrence. Rick was instrumental in powerlifting in the state of Florida. He pretty much kept it alive when it started declining in the around 2010. Powerlifting was taking kind of a downward turn with the the emergence of CrossFit being so popular. People started moving that direction. He kept it going, and he unfortunately passed away a couple years ago. I got to lift at that meet. It meant a lot. One of the kind of the coolest parts of that meet, and unfortunately I'm going to turn it back to her, is she was the best lifter at that meet as well for the females. So I got to lift at it, and my wife got to be the best lifter.
Absolutely. Well, that's wonderful, with the meaning behind that meet, that competition as well, but also the fact that you were both involved in that one. That's a lovely place to start. Okay, so that's one that stands out to you as one of your personal favorites. Any others that come to mind, or is that the main one that you'd like to focus on for now?
My first meet was fun because I almost bombed out of it. I was on my do or die last attempt on the bench press, and I actually lifted a state record in my first meet, and got to stay in the meet, and actually kind of caught the bug at that moment that this was something I wanted to keep doing. That one was a lot of fun. The 2020 national championship stands out because it was one of the toughest situations I've been in. I had the bright idea to cut 42 pounds in a matter of 3 weeks. And I went from 240 to 198, and that cut almost killed me. Everybody was telling me to not do it. Everybody was telling me when I was there, just stop. And I kept cutting weight. And then I lifted a world record at 198. So anything else that I had that stands out pretty much involves her. So my meets are my meets. Her meets are more fun.
Excuse me.
Absolutely. We'll touch on that shortly as well in terms of both of your achievements together and everything and what that means. But I just wanted to take a moment to highlight some of your own achievements, Tim, and on that topic as well. Obviously, you've trained and coached Kathleen to be the athlete that she is today, and we spoke a lot about that in our interview recently. Do you coach other people as well, or is it mainly just something that you do for her?
So we have a team, and I guess I'm kind of the coach of the team, but they're all adults. They do their training how they do their training. I have coached people in the past. I mainly focus on her these days. So
Yeah, well, that's cool. It makes sense, but it's good you're passing on your knowledge, in one way or another, which is giving that a good mention. So that's cool. So we got what I have here, toughest competition. Well, you've answered that as well. So one of the things I'd like to touch on, actually, with sort of involving both of you, so I don't mind who wants to answer this, but when you first met, well, actually, let's start there. If you don't mind me asking, how did you both initially meet? Was it through powerlifting, or was it through a totally different, something else altogether?
it was totally different altogether. I met her when I started working at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. I was a police officer, brand new. And she worked in the property room as a civilian technician at the time. And I'll actually let you.
Yeah, we met there. We met at work.
I initially thought she hated my guts. Because I tried to flirt with her and she was stone faced and like shut me down and basically told me to leave.
Okay, so a little bit hard to get there as well. That's yeah,
bit.
it does happen. A lot of great romances, they start that way. Oh, that is lovely. And obviously, Tim, you were competing and lifting at this time, but Kathleen, I know we spoke about this in our interview, but it came later. So when you met Tim, did you ever have any idea that you'd be competing and you'd be doing some of what you're doing now? Because I understand it came a couple of years later after you met, didn't it? Am I right in the timeline with that?
Yeah, no, I did not think that I was going to be doing this. Like I worked out, I went to the gym, but I just did, regular training like any normal person. They just go to the gym and they work out, but no, I knew that he did it, and I supported him. I liked going to his meets and, watching him do stuff and watching everybody else, lift all those weights. Even when I went to the meets and I would watch, I never sat there once saying, I'm going to do this too. No, it was all him. He was the one that pushed me to do this.
Absolutely. Well, I love that, the way that you push each other to be the best that you can both be, basically. It's a wonderful thing. And on that note as well, I am curious, how do you both juggle your training regimes and the intense dedication that your sport takes around work and family and just life in general, basically? I think that's going to be very interesting for people, as I said at the beginning, a side of things that people don't see so much from the outside looking in. So how do you do that in terms of like the time management and all of that side of things? Whoever wants to answer, I don't mind. Some of them I'll just throw out there, and whoever wants
So,
first, it's cool with me, you know.
so I'll be quite honest. He always puts my training ahead of his, and he just does. And my training becomes his main focus. And even if he's training for something, and I'll tell him, I was like, you have to get your training in. Make sure you get to the gym. Make sure you take care of what you need to take care of. And he's like, I'll do it when I have time. And he still gets the training in, but quite honestly, because he spends so much time focusing on me, I think that his training sometimes suffers. So I always make it a point to let him know pretty much on a daily, are you going to train today? Are you going to the gym? Do you need to get up early? What are you doing? We have to, it's a constant reminder to make sure he gets his stuff done, because he literally does focus a lot of his time on me and my training and what I need to get done, which I appreciate. But he's got a meet coming up that he plans on doing in October. And I was like, after this show, training is solely focusing on you. And then I got my invite to the 9/11 meet for September.
No.
And then I got the invite to the WPO in November, which
Literally a week after my competition.
yeah, which I'm doing both of them, and he's doing his, but I'm because it's now a powerlifting thing, I think it'll make it a little bit easier, because now we'll be able to train together, because that's when we were only doing powerlifting, we always trained together. There was never a training session that we were alone, unless I was at work and I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym during my lunch break, or same with him.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. There's a few good topics there. I mean, obviously the sacrifice, the time management, everything. I mean, it's amazing. It's just absolutely amazing that that you both continue to perform at the highest level and achieve everything that you're achieving while juggling life, as I mentioned, in general. So it's an amazing, that's not a question, I'm just saying it's an incredible thing to be doing. I'd also like to touch on that as well, in terms of when you're competing. Now, Tim, you mentioned earlier about the memorial meet and how you both competed there together. And with this, I don't really have one narrow question about this. I don't mind who wants to go first to answer this, but I'd just like to get a feel for basically what it's like at the competitions when you're both competing at the same time and when there is that overlap, because obviously I know you support each other, and sometimes one of you will be lifting, one of you won't, and everything. But in those situations, I don't know how many times that's happened for you, but in those situations where you're both competing at the same event, as you mentioned there, how do you sort of manage that dynamic as well? I think that'll be very interesting for people, please.
So we don't typically compete at the same competition anymore, only because it takes a lot. It takes a lot for one person to compete. You usually need a lot of help. You need people to wrap your knees. If you're in equipment, set your gear, lift offs, running to the score table to put in attempts, or
Everything.
It takes a lot. I mean, we did a competition. We did several together to start when she first started, but after one particular meet where they had only one flight of lifters and we were both squatting in the same flight, and I had to wrap her knees, unwrap her knees after her attempt, re-roll the knee wraps, wrap my knees, and run back out. I mean, I was pretty exhausted, and we said pretty much at that point, we're not doing
Never
that again. We have done competitions together where I've just deadlifted, or that's it. Where she'll do the full meet and I'll just deadlift, and that works out fine, because I can take care of her for the first two events, and then there's usually a nice break, relax, and then get ready to deadlift myself. So, but it's very difficult to both be at the same competition, even if we're in different flights. But that one time when there was just one flight, it was impossible.
And realistically, even if you have a bunch of people with you, because there's certain things that I'm very particular with, such as knee wrapping, that I don't want anybody else to do it. He knows how it needs to be set. He knows exactly how they need to be. So if he's not wrapping them, I don't want them.
Yeah.
I love that. That makes sense. Well, yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, the trust is obviously there, and that makes all the difference, you know. So again, with this, I don't mind who wants to answer this next one first. You know, you decide that with yourselves. But it would be cool to get a mention for your proudest moments for each other, if that makes sense. So I know that that might sound a little bit abstract, but Tim, you mentioned earlier, even with that memorial one, when you said about her achievements, you were just sort of glowing for a moment there with that being the best part of it for you. And I figured that might come up. So it would be good to get a mention for in reverse of the proudest moments for each other when you've when each one of you has seen the other one sort of hit their potential, or you know, your favorite moments for each other, if that makes sense, please. That would be a cool one. I know it's a little abstract, but it seems that there's a lot here of for each of you, each one winning for the other person almost means more than your own achievements for yourselves at times, if that makes sense. So let's just touch on that a little bit. I don't mind who wants to answer first. Go wherever you want to go with that one. But yeah, let's talk about that, please.
All right. So I told her before my proudest moments of her, obviously one, you know, has to be when she broke the all-time world record in the bench press. I think I almost ripped the bar back out of the rack. I was slamming it and just jumping around. And so that was obviously one. But after that was the very first meet, the very first competition she did, because she, you know, a lot of people, they don't have the guts to go out there. And she went out there and she was an absolute warrior. She just put it all out there. She a couple of lifts, she lifted way past what she thought she could do. And I was beside myself. And then, I mean, she won best lifter after that. So, I mean, really past her own expectations. I was blown away. I think for about a week, I was bragging about her. So.
Oh yeah, incredible, incredible. And let's go the other way, Kathleen. Yourself for Tim. Let's touch on that a little bit.
So I mean, every single meet that he's done, every time I watch him lift, I'm always amazed, just because, you know, I'm like, and I always joke with him, I'm like, oh, you so strong. He is, though, you know, he's strong. And I love watching him lift. I can't say that there's one particular moment that makes me proud, because every single one of them makes me proud. Because even if training suffers, you know, for one reason or another, he still goes out there and gives 100% of himself. And that attitude transfers into his everyday life. I mean, he gives 100% of himself to everything, to me, to the kids, to work. I mean, to everything. So every meet that he's done, I'm always there screaming like a freaking lunatic. And I always laugh because I record his lifts, and all you do is you hear me just screaming into the phone as I'm recording it. And I laugh when I listen to them and I watch them, because I'm like, oh my God, I sound like an absolute maniac. But I'm so excited, you know, and I want to cheer him on, and I want to make sure that even though there's a bunch of people screaming, that if he can hear one voice, that he hears mine.
Absolutely. Oh, that's a beautiful thing. You know, the way you've described that, it's absolutely wonderful, in all fairness. On that subject of obviously supporting each other, I mean, we've touched a bit on the training and everything. I'll come back to that in a moment. But in terms of obviously the mental strength that you have to do what you both do, just as much as the physical strength, I'd imagine it comes into it. What are your ways of mentally preparing for competition? I know we touched on this right at the beginning with the event tomorrow, but to go a little bit deeper into that, you know, on the build up to any event, a big meet or whatever, any event, what is going through your minds, just to delve a little bit deeper into that, and some of the ways that you help each other, because Kathleen, you mentioned at the beginning about being self-critical, and some of these things that naturally come into it. And I think it's useful for people in any walk of life when they're chasing their dreams and their goals. Those things come into it, nerves and doubts and self-criticism and all this type of thing. And as I keep saying, these are things that people don't see going on. People see you lift, but they don't see everything that goes on behind the scenes. So just some of the ways you help each other with those mental processes. It would be really cool to delve into that a little bit more, please, guys.
I will be quite honest. He can talk about himself. He doesn't really get the nerves. He just stays super focused. The one that falls apart is me. I don't know how many times I have broken down in tears just over these past couple of days, because I'm like, I just want to do well. I just want to make him proud. I want to make my coach proud. I want to make myself proud. I have so much support right now that I'm like, I don't want to let anybody down. And I don't think that they will be let down regardless of what the outcome is. But I just, I want to do the best that I know that I can, because we worked real hard to get where we are and for this show tomorrow. But even with the powerlifting meets, I mean, he'll have numbers that he expects me to hit, and he knows I'll hit them, and I wind up hitting them, sometimes exceeding what he has put on paper. But I hate it. I hate the fact that I doubt myself. And he always says, and I think I said this at the last time that we spoke, he always says, I'll believe enough for the both of us until you believe. So he helps keep me grounded.
I always tell people that we train our minds, we don't train our bodies. We train our minds to get through tough things, and our bodies will follow. And I've asked people on our team, sports are mental and physical. How much do you believe they're mental and physical? And they'll be like 50-50, 40-60, whatever. And then I'll ask them, all right, you're at least acknowledging that there's a mental aspect. You say it's 50% mental, 50% physical. Well, how much mental preparation have you put into getting ready for today? How many motivational speeches have you listened to? How many books have you read? How much studying have you done? How much technique breakdown have you done? Have you meditated? Have you prayed? Have you, what have you done to mentally get yourself there? And most people will say none. We listen to motivational things all day. We break down technique all day. We break down the rep schemes all day. I think that the mental aspect far out exceeds the physical aspect. And I've told her, one of the quotes that I keep coming back to is from Steve Harvey. And actually he got it from his father, is whatever you see in your mind, you can hold in your hand. So if you believe it, if you can see it happening, you can make it happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is powerful wisdom, 100% true. I agree. And it's something personally that fascinates me about sports in general, because with these interviews, having done over, well, I don't even know, but over 250 or however many it is with, people at the high level, that mental aspect shows itself up time and time again as being so important. And yet it's so frequently overlooked by a lot of people, Tim, as you said. So very valuable wisdom. And like I always say, we're doing these interviews, it's little things like that you've learned along the way. Well, it's a very big thing, really, that will then filter down and encourage other people to follow their dreams and everything, which is a big part of the reason why I do these in the first place. So very, very grateful for that answer. Very grateful to touch on that. that's the mental aspect, the physical aspect of your training and what you do every day. To delve a little bit deeper into that and into your routine. Now, hopefully it's not a sort of a boring question for you, because it is what you do every day. But with obviously with this interview, people who know all about powerlifting and everything will know a lot of this. But just to keep everyone who's not as involved in the sport and the layman in the loop as well, can you, one of you, share with us basically your routine on the build up to competition in any area you'd like to hone into with that? I don't mind where we go.
Okay. Well, we follow a very old school kind of training method. It's a progressive overload with linear progression. We just add weight, drop a rep here or there if we have to, but we try to keep the volume high leading into a competition, at least for powerlifting. For bodybuilding, it's all repetition. But we just slowly increase the weight, keep the volume pretty high. We train the main lifts, the squat, the bench, and the deadlift, super heavy, and all the accessories are treated like bodybuilding. It's higher volume, keep the blood supply in there, help aid in recovery, and then strengthen all the weaker connective tissue, like all the smaller muscles, not necessarily, the pecs for the bench, but, the subscapularis muscles and, the triceps, the lats for control. And then we kind of run it kind of like West Side Barbell, where we, change things up every 2 to 3 weeks. We'll change the bar, we'll change the movement, or we'll change the stimulus somehow. Old school, it's been around for forever because it works. We don't, we'll add bands here or there, for resistance or to change our stimulus, but we touch the chest, on the bench press every week. We squat to depth every week. We pull something heavy or do a hinge movement every week. So it's not, unfortunately, it's not rocket science. Everybody wants to reinvent the wheel, but the wheel's been perfected for hundreds of thousands of years for a reason. It's work. It's time tested. So.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, in many cases, old school does it best, really. I agree with that concept. I mean, as you say, it's been around for a long time and it works. There's a lot of fads and sort of new things around nowadays, but I get where you're going with the old school. Kathleen, anything you'd like to add to that, or has Tim pretty much covered that?
He's covered it. I leave the
Okay.
training to him.
Well,
I don't try to talk about things that I don't know about.
I've obviously she's got good genetics for the lifting and for the bodybuilding and for the powerlifting and everything like that. But I always tell her that she has the benefit of 20 years of knowledge without having to make 20 years of mistakes. That's why she is able to be, and then not just with me. We have a bunch of Sly, Gary. We have a bunch of guys on our team who have been lifting longer than me, 30, 35, 40 years, some of them. And they know what did not work for them, what hurt them, what got them injured. Same thing with me. So she's been relatively injury free. She's hurt her hamstring here or there. She's, pulled something or tweaked something, but she hasn't had a serious injury because we've been able to guide her away from injury because of using us as guinea pigs to find out what doesn't work so we can use what does work on her. So.
Absolutely. Wow, that is incredible when you look at it from that point of view of the amount of combined years, obviously, of yourself and those other guys on the team. If you add that all up, it really says something. So that's a very cool insight. And you mentioned there as well about something else I'd like to touch on, which sort of goes back to the mental aspect in a way, the physical aspect. It's a bit of both. Obviously, the concept of pain barriers and pushing through the pain is an essential part of what you do, and I think goes back to the mental strength. For us mere mortals listening to this who can't lift, to the level that what you're doing, in that sense, how do you push through basically the pain that's obviously naturally going to come up? Because the reason I ask this, by the way, just before you answer that, is I think it's really cool for people to see that basically you're having the same emotions, the same experiences that anybody would have. And this question is one that I think ties into sports fans or people who are just starting out competing or whatever. I've seen it a lot where they look at people who've achieved everything you both have and think, oh man, there's no way they feel nerves, there's no way they feel pain, there's no way they do this, there's no way they do that. Obviously, everybody does. It's just how we handle it, how we choose to how we used to deal with that. So that's my reason for asking this. But yeah, basically, how do you push through the pain barrier? Whoever wants to answer this one first,
You
I'll
go.
start with you.
So I mean, as far as pain goes, obviously with the bodybuilding, I haven't had, many issues other than just being, sore and stuff like that. With the powerlifting though, it's totally different because obviously I'm lifting ridiculously big amounts of weight. And as the weight gets heavier, obviously it gets more painful. And honestly, I just use that pain to push through the lift faster. As I'm taking a squat, I feel like my eyeballs are going to bulge out when I'm in the hole. And my thought process is the faster I get up, the faster this weight gets off my shoulders. Kind of like the same with the bench. The faster I push it up, the faster that weight gets out of my hands. So you use it to help, I guess, some help with the movement to make it faster. And as far as that goes, really, it only hurts for a few seconds. It's not forever. So if you can handle literally just a few seconds of this is ridiculously uncomfortable, I might die, you'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Do you have anything to add to that, Tim, or has she pretty much covered that one?
I wouldn't listen to him on this part because he's a psychopath. So with pain, he will not listen to pain. He'll hurt himself and he still keeps lifting even though he's hurt. So we've gotten to a point where our team members, including myself, have kind of gotten together to try and corral him a little bit. So that way he doesn't keep injuring areas that are already injured.
Yeah. So my chiro, actually, she asked it, she said, are you a Terminator or something? Because, what happened to you? Well, I blew my hip out. Oh my God. Yeah, I tried to take another set, but everybody tried to stop me. And I mean, I broke my foot one time and I kept deadlifting. I dropped a 100-pound plate across the bridge of it. I dropped a plate on the side of my leg and I told them I was just going to take a break and I'll hit the next set. I tore my shoulder and I was in like 3 days later, training upper body again. I accept the fact that things are going to hurt and you're going to be injured, but there's no excuse to not keep, not push. While that's probably not the smartest thing, it's who I am. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going,
We slow him down a touch.
Yeah.
If I'm around, he's not going to do it. He won't do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
But obviously I'm not always there to watch. So
that is pretty wild, Yeah, the Terminator, man. That's a good name for you.
Well, the Mark Bell's brother said, I'd rather be dead than average, and I honestly believe she said the difference between me and other people is, people are afraid to hurt themselves and you don't care if you hurt yourself. And I really don't. I would feel worse inside if I didn't push 100%. If I dialed it back and like, hey, you did good. But if I didn't give everything I had, I would feel worse inside than if I was hurt. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. I get where you're coming from with that, the concept of leaving there with no regrets and knowing that you've given it 100% and everything. It makes sense. It does make a lot of sense because obviously that physical pain is temporary, whereas those regrets, they haunt people always or whatever. So I get where you're coming from with that, to give it 100%. But again, there's quite a few things we're touching on here today that I love because they're applicable to life as well. So for people listening to this, Even though we're talking about powerlifting, when people are pursuing their goals, whether that's a new career choice or their education or a different sport to powerlifting or whatever, a lot of these lessons that you've both learned along your way, they still apply to that. So you said about motivational content earlier. There's some fantastic content like that coming from both of you. The wisdom, the knowledge. So I think that's super cool, to be honest. Touching on sort of what I call an intangible benefit of lifting and doing what you do. What I mean by that is through lifting, I'd imagine that you've both got to visit places that you wouldn't have necessarily gone to otherwise if it wasn't for going there to compete. Now, I'm not 100% sure if that applies, but I ask this question sometimes mainly for inspiration for people starting out, to be honest. I mean, as well as the achievements and the accolades. That's why I say it's an intangible benefit, even though it's abstract. People don't think of it, that you can get to visit places. Kathleen, you mentioned, I think you mentioned the Olympia, or you mentioned it, this venue at the beginning, and I was like, wow, okay. So are there places that powerlifting has taken either of you that you wouldn't have got to go if you were just a regular person, basically, if that makes sense? And again, whoever wants to answer this first, I don't mind. You go ahead, whoever wants to answer.
So everything, we've basically stayed within the continental United States. So, I mean, to some people might be like, whatever, it is what it is, but I probably never would have gone to Ohio. I mean, sorry to anybody that's been to Ohio, but I'm like, my first thought isn't like, hey, let's go to Ohio. But we went there, and there's actually some great gyms there, Elite FTS and Westside Barbell, which are two gyms, three gyms that I would have loved to visit it, but probably never would have said, hey, let's just take a trip specifically to go to this gym. But when we went to the Arnold, which was there, we were able to actually visit those gyms. So that was great. And that was when Louis Simmons was still alive. I got him to sign one of my belts that I no longer use. It's been retired. It's just hanging in our gym now. Louis complimented him on a squat, so now he can die happy.
At that point, when he said that my squats look good, it's like, Frank Sinatra saying that you're a great singer or something like that. I was literally ready to run out into traffic and get hit by a truck, because everything else was going to be downhill after that point. But yeah, it was great. We got to go to Elite FTS, and I got to have a long conversation with Dave Tate about injuries. That was a great one. We got a lot of pictures of our daughter running around Westside Barbell, playing with all the equipment, and Louis was loving it. He was having a great time. She was loading plates and picking up barbells and stuff.
We get to come to, and I'm from New York originally, but I don't come back home often. So with the 9/11 meets, which obviously are big and I hold near and dear to me, and we're able to come back every year, to New York and around the time of 9/11, compete, but then also make our way into the city. And we're big foodies, which I mentioned before. We eat our way through Manhattan and Long Island. I mean, and even some of the meets in Florida, like we've been to Tampa and Fort Lauderdale, and those are about 4-hour drives from where we are. So it's not something that we're going to sit there and say every weekend, hey, let's go to Fort Lauderdale. But we've been able to go to, those places where, again, we compete, we stay a few days, and we always seem to find a little hole in the wall food spots. I mean, our love language is food outside of lifting. So we, it's just great. It's a good opportunity to actually spend time with each other. Like right now, our kids are in Florida right now. We're blessed to have family to take care of them. So we're able to come here by ourselves, focus on this show. And then after the show, we're just, we're going to have a couple of days to ourselves to do whatever we want.
Very nice, very, very nice indeed. Well, as I mentioned before, it's something that is very, very cool about sports in general, getting to visit places you wouldn't go. And like I said, that's really one that I think is inspiring for anybody who's sort of up and coming, really, because as well as all of the main focus is, achieving their personal best and being the best they can be, and all of those things that we've talked about. There are these sort of little intangible things, as I've mentioned, that people overlook of, where it actually takes place, and all this type of thing. So that is very cool. Now, obviously, one thing I'd like to touch on here that's actually just come to me. So this wasn't in the list of stuff I sent over, but like with your children and everything, obviously they're growing up with both parents competing. And if you don't mind me asking about this, by the way, I'm just curious, like if they wanted to follow in your footsteps or, compete in the future, how would you both feel about that? Would you sort of train them and sort of explain how it all works and everything?
I think the only one that we probably have that will do that will be the 4-year-old. And she'll actually be 5 July 2nd. So we'll be going home to a 5-year-old, which every time we think about it, we're like, oh God. But she's
the one that has the athletic ability. She is the one who has the frame and the one that has the desire. She likes coming into the gym with us on Saturdays when the team's over. You'll have a 300 and something pound guy with 400, 500, 600 pounds on his back, and she'll get behind him and try to back spot him, and we're all like, oh gosh, let everything go. Okay,
she thinks she's back spotting him.
So she's holding a big guy's waist as he's going down and up, and I'm like, but she's got her own barbells and dumbbells, and she lifts them, and she's super strong. She can do pull-ups. She's been able to do pull-ups for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
So she would be the one who would.
And she's very
want to do it.
Very stubborn, like him. So she will not give up.
No.
And she gets very frustrated if it doesn't go right, and she'll just
like you.
Yes, but she's the one that if she's going to get involved in the sports of the powerlifting or the bodybuilding, which she loves the powerlifting. I started doing the bodybuilding. She wanted a posing suit. She got one. She poses with me. I mean, so I will definitely encourage her to do it, because I don't want to raise I don't want to raise any child to be weak or to feel weak or to feel like they have to depend on anybody else to do things. I think it kind of gets a little more difficult when it's a girl, because sometimes females are looked at as inferior and not strong.
Yeah.
But she already is strong. She's gonna be strong.
I wasn't gonna,
we're not gonna push it on her, but
No.
I think she's taken to it, so we'll encourage.
Yeah, and I was determined when she was little that she wasn't going to be afraid of things. So I would find bugs and lizards and toads, and I'd show them to her, little animals outside, make her hold them. And now she's not a typical, and I hate to say it, little girly girl. She's a girl. She likes dresses and makeup and jewelry and sparkly things, but she'll get down and get dirty, and she'll catch lizards, and she'll lift heavy things and run around and do flips and stuff. So I want her to have every opportunity that she can possibly have.
His sister just sent us a picture the other day, and I was like, of course, she's in a dress on a skateboard with sparkly shoes. So I'm like, that's our girl.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's wonderful. That's a beautiful thing, in all fairness. And yeah, I mean the confidence, the ability to take risks and really go and get what you want out of life. I mean, it's a very, very powerful thing. So whether she competes or not, I mean, that is the beauty of sports in general. It's one of the most amazing things about it. Absolutely. So moving into the last couple of things for you both, obviously talking about future plans. Now, throughout this, we've touched on that. Obviously, I started with that with the competitions you've both got coming up in October, November, and tomorrow, and just all the way around. So we have touched on this a little bit, but basically I'd like to again go deeper into that for both of you, as to your future goals. Now, as I mentioned, we've touched on a few of them sort of towards the end of this year. So I don't mind if you want to look past that, if you are looking past that, or if you want to talk about something else. But it's just given how much you both achieved, the future is still very, very bright, and you're both still at the highest level. So I just think it deserves mentioning, really, what is lighting your fire from here, basically. And again, whoever wants to answer first, it's totally cool, but obviously this applies to both of you. So just take that one where it needs to go, please.
Well, as far for me, I have a competition in October. Training for my last competition went pretty well up until the last couple of weeks. My squats were going great. My bench press was pretty stagnant, and my deadlift actually, I kind of tweaked my back a little bit, so I lost a couple of weeks of training that way. So I didn't really hit the numbers I wanted to hit at that meet. I did okay, but I didn't do great. So just everything that I planned on hitting at the last meet, I want to be able to hit in October. I missed another national record squat. I took it on my second attempt, and I started coming up fine, but I got forward and kind of lost it. And then I'd like to heal up my shoulder so I could actually put a decent total back up. So 750 squat, 360 bench, and a 650 deadlift, 660 deadlift for October. That's kind of the only goal I got. Everything else, baby steps after that. But I don't think I'll be satisfied until I've squatted at least 800 pounds and deadlifted at least 700 pounds.
Very cool. I love that. I mean, even with everything you've achieved over 20 years, still pushing, still striving. I love that. And Kathleen, same for you, because obviously with this as well, there is the powerlifting side, but there is the bodybuilding side as well. And I know we touched on this in our interview last time, but let's walk through that again. Your dreams and goals in sort of both sides of that, please.
So with tomorrow's show, God willing, everything goes well. I'll be walking away with my pro card in bodybuilding after this would be my second show. And then after that, we go right into my powerlifting block, getting ready for the 9/11 meet in September. And he's got all the numbers that he wants me to hit. I'm squat, bench, deadlift. My lift is the bench. I love them all. I love doing powerlifting, but bench press is my best event. And so I hold, the world record at 148 for females at 460 pounds. I'm hoping to break that with 500 pounds in September. And then for the WPO, when I finished 2 years ago, I finished top 6. I would like to be in the top 5. Other than that, I mean, after that, I'll be getting ready for my pro debut, which we still haven't set in stone yet. But we're gonna take some time to grow, to put on size, to focus on the powerlifting, because that is truly what helped me put on the size and the mass that I needed. And then do my pro debut, whether it be next year or the year after that. But I think we both agreed that I need to take some time to put on the size that will be comfortable with presenting as a pro bodybuilder.
Absolutely. Well, it's amazing to give that a mention as well. As I've mentioned before, given the fact that you've both accomplished so much so far, but you still have those those goals left to hit. I think that's incredible. So the last couple of things to touch on, and then we'll wrap this up. One of the things, obviously, throughout this whole talk, we've touched on a lot of life lessons that apply to people in different life areas. And just to sort of underpin that before we wrap this up, this is the second to last question I've got. But when it comes to somebody listening to this anywhere in the world, whether it's over here in the UK, whether it's in the US, whether it's somewhere else altogether, what would you say to people who are basically just starting out and they have a large goal that they want to hit, or they want to achieve a dream? Now, it doesn't have to be specifically powerlifting orientated, although we could certainly give a mention to that. But I just think that given everything you've achieved, given well, as well, the decades of knowledge that are around you, Tim, you mentioned that as well with your team and everything. I know it's a pretty big question, but somebody comes to you and says, look, I want to succeed at such and such. What would be maybe one or two sort of essential ingredients they have to do it, if this makes sense to you both?
So with anything, you got to actually believe that you can do it. You gotta have the mental aspect, the mental power, the mental fortitude that whatever you're going for, you're going to give whatever it takes to get there. You're going to sacrifice what you need to sacrifice. You're going to do what you need to do. You're going to add what you need to add. You're going to subtract what you need to subtract. If your dreams aren't, don't scare you, at least a little bit, they're not big enough. And nobody rises to low expectations. Have high expectations of yourself and do everything you have to do to get there.
Absolutely. That's there we are. I knew that would be a good answer, but it's a great answer, and it just sort of condenses a few things, because we have talked about these different things, and the Steve Harvey quote and all the things we've said during this time, but it just underpins that before we wrap up. And Kathleen, same to you. Anything you'd add to that?
The only thing I would add to that, and that it's realistically, I guess it would be more towards sports related, because we just actually spoke about this. We spoke about this a couple of times, but just yesterday, the sacrifices that have to be made. We were sitting there one day talking about, it was Father's Day actually, and we were talking about, God, when we took him, my oldest son works at a nice Japanese restaurant. We went there. And I was like, God, when's the last time we've done something for Mother's Day? Like, when's the last Mother's Day meal I ate? When's the last birthday meal I ate? I've missed so many special events, parties. I mean, just you name it, I've missed it because I was always in a prep and I couldn't eat, or I chose not to go. And did it suck in the moment? Maybe a little bit. But I was doing it for a reason, and I reached those goals because I was willing to make those sacrifices. And it sucks. I'll just say it sucks. Sometimes it sucks not being able to go to the parties or to have a drink or to eat the food. But what's even better is when you reach that goal and then you can, because once I reach my goal tomorrow, I can eat and, food's not going anywhere. But, at the same time, like I said, sometimes, if it gets to be too much and it's not fun, that's when you need to take a little break, which is why I don't mind waiting to do my pro debut, because the reality is I don't want to get to the point where I look at bodybuilding like, oh my God, this is horrible. I can never do anything. I want to enjoy my life because, I have a husband and a family for a reason, because I want to enjoy them. And I don't want to miss out on too many things. Missing out on a couple of things here and there is fine. I'll make the sacrifices for that, but I'm definitely not willing to put all this ahead of them. There has to be a balance. So I'm going to enjoy the next year, doing what I do. And then when we choose that time for the pro debut, we get dialed in, we get focused, and we do it again.
it comes back to, it may not make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but it's something Dave Tate said. When you look back, are you going to have regrets? Of course you're going to have regrets, but the thing about regrets is you've got to earn them. And I've earned every one of my regrets, and you know what? I'm happy with what I'm doing. So.
Absolutely. I love that, guys. There is so much wisdom in everything you shared today. Absolutely incredible. Honestly, that's exceeded my expectations. Very last thing, and this is just a quick one. I close out these with thank yous usually. What I mean by that is obviously you help each other and support each other. But Tim, you mentioned earlier about the team and about some of the guys with 30 years experience and whatever. So it just got me to thinking, is there anyone else that you would either of you would like to give a thank you to or give a mention to basically on here who has helped you along the way in any way, shape or form that's happened?
Obviously I want to, thank all the guys on our team, specifically like Sylvester Crumley, Gary Bishop. I mean, those guys are, Mike Holman. I mean, those guys are like clockwork. They're always there. And they keep us, specifically me, they keep me from doing stupid things. And it's not out of ego or pride. It's just out of, determination, I guess is the best way to put it. My dad was always, my biggest hero. So I always want to thank my dad, who was also a 1977 European powerlifting champion. Throw that out. And my, he'll never hear this, but my first coach, my late coach, Tommy Fannin, he passed away several years back. He's actually the guy we got our gym's monolift from. I'm eternally grateful for his coaching, his guidance, and his friendship. God rest his soul. He's a great guy, and I wish more people could have met him.
There we are. That is anyone else we'd like to mention, or we covered everybody there? Kathleen, do you have anyone else you'd like to mention, or we covered everybody?
Yeah, I think we covered it the last time. Of course, my work, my family, my coach, my team at Affinity Fitness, and my powerlifting team, our powerlifting team, Ryan Barbell. Just anybody really who's been supportive. I honestly am super grateful and appreciative for everybody, because it's hard sometimes. But when you have that support, it makes it a little bit easier, and it makes you want to push harder, because these people are supporting you. You want to make them proud, and that's just me. I want to make them proud. I want them to see that their support is not going unnoticed, unwarranted.
Absolutely.
They're great.
Sorry, but no, that's really good to give that a mention, because the thing is, obviously for you guys, with these people that you mentioned who've helped you, you're all in this together, and what's what. But it's good to give their names a mention for the wider world and for everybody else, because from that context, those people are effectively behind the scenes, so it's good to give them a mention. And obviously with people who've passed, getting their memory out there and everything as well. That's a beautiful thing. So I'm glad we got to do that. I just had a feeling that there was something there that needed to be said, and there we go. So good, brilliant. Well, we've talked about a lot of stuff. I'm super grateful for both of you making a time for this today, taking time out of your morning, especially before a competition, as I said, but anytime. I'm very grateful for it. And it's just one of those things where it really has exceeded my expectations. I'm not just saying that because we've got obviously a lot of the fun stuff and a lot of the great memories from the competitions and all these cool things, but we've gone a bit deeper, and we've got those life lessons and that motivational side of things in there as well. So it ticks all the boxes. So Last thing for me to do is just to say a big thank you for you both, and good luck for tomorrow as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.